Well, welcome back, everyone. It's good to feel your presence and to be on the planet with you in the times that we live in. So, this is the weekly WeAwake global meditation, and we've been doing it for a while now, and you guys seem to really love it. So, um, let your friends know. I think the more people that we can get together in this field to create this meditative, sacred uh, field of energy. One thing we know from science and from the mystics and from the poets and from our moments of highest realization is that we are all one thing and we are all connected. And so you never know how the good that you do is going to uh, affect the world. But that's really not your business. Your business is just to do what you're supposed to do and trust God or higher power, however you want to say that, for the rest. So today we're going to do, it's kind of a short one. It's a 20-minute, short for us anyway. And it is called Refuge. And it was created by our colleague and friend and this wonderful general person and wise woman, etc., Naja Lin from Berlin. And anyway, she just does great stuff. And check out all her stuff on the WeAwake app. So this is called Refuge. And that's, I know a lot of us are, these are just really hard times. We will never forget 2020. I mean, this era is just something else. And a lot of pressures and a lot of stress and a lot of changes and a lot of just revolution in the streets and in our minds and gosh, it's interesting. Like the Chinese say, the curse, may you live in interesting times. Well, we're smack dab in the middle of it. So may we find refuge in this together. And I think it's totally appropriate for meditation to be a refuge. And I think that's a really good way to look forward to it. It's a time to heal inside, a time to connect with source, a time to sort yourself out, time to let go of stuff you need to let go of and receive stuff that you need for the journey. So, and a time to be grateful and a time for sending out energy and prayers to all beings. So that's what we do. And okay, Vanessa, let's roll this thing and I'll see you on the other side. Well, welcome back, or welcome. Nobody ever really actually goes anywhere, but here we are. And well, that was beautiful. Thank you very much. I had meditated about 15 minutes preparing myself for this meditation, and that was definitely the spiritual icing on the cake, if you will. That was really good. And I want to talk about a few things that can be achieved in meditation, and of course the classic goal of meditation that came out of the great spiritual traditions is the goal of waking up, or discovering God, if you will, this ultimate kind of higher consciousness that that we are ultimately, and it's called self-realization, when you realize it's what you are and always have been. And in the probably the most ancient written tradition that we know of, I mean, obviously there are spiritual things going on since our ancestors. I mean, we've never found a tribe. There's never been a people. There's never been, well, you can say the Soviet experiment, the communist experiment, trying to do away with religion, didn't work very well. It came back with a vengeance, and it still carries on. But it's just a part of who we are. And one of the goals of the beginning goals of meditation is to be able to simply sit without thinking, okay, and just become open, spacious awareness without thought. And after some years, and vastly speeded up by this technology. In fact, maybe you can do it on your first try with this stuff. I don't know. We're all a bit different, but I seem to be able to achieve that quite regularly if I choose to. Thought becomes an option and not a trap. Okay, and when we do that, it begins to free us a bit. The developmental psychologists say that the subject, or the I, this is who I am, of this level of development becomes the object of the next level of development. So I use that in my work with addicts, saying when you are in the throes of the disease of addiction, some people say you shouldn't call people addicts because they'll get really offended and they'll go and relapse. Well, most of the people I work with are way beyond that. And normally you don't check yourself into a treatment center or hire a coach or whatever that is, or a therapist, if you don't think you have a problem. So, but after a while, when you're no longer being controlled by the addiction, then it's possible to say, not I'm an addict, but I have an addiction. I mean, it's something there, but it's no longer running my life. And it's no longer controlling me. It's no longer the controlling I. So that continues, not just with addiction, but I think that's a good way to illustrate it, that the things that we used to think were us become somehow something we can tap into, like files on a computer, on a hard drive. Yeah, not necessarily what rules us from our unconscious. So the pure awareness and becoming conscious, awareness, being aware of awareness, is a big step. And in those states, it's where we get our mystical, unitive, non-dual experiences that everybody talks about these days. And when I first started studying this back in the 80s, transpersonal psychology, the whole point was to largely to justify that the mystical, spiritual, non-dual states of reality are real, and they're not just superstitious religious mumbo jumbo, but they're there. And of course, the psychedelic revolution in the 60s certainly brought that home to a lot of us, that type of consciousness that we read about was actually a reality. So these days I can read Rumi and I get it, not that, I don't think I'm as Rumi is, but I certainly understand those states and where he's coming from. And it's true with all the mystics once you become experienced enough in these states of consciousness. So that's terrific. But there are also other things besides this kind of ultimate realization of self, which is really important. But that realization is just the beginning of the journey. Once you realize that level of consciousness, or Jesus said, except the man be born again, he can't enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, what happens when you're born? Well, you're just a little baby, right? You're an infant, and it takes years to where you can inhabit your form and your body and your mind and your emotions in a way that you're not only just there, but you're actually being of service and starting to take care and help others and defend others and provide for others and raise the next generation. So that's kind of what happens in spirituality once we get to that point, and then we have to sort ourselves out. And going along with the title of these tracts, refuge. One of the things that the Buddhists talk about, taking refuge in the dharma. Taking refuge in each one of our own Buddha natures. But there's also kind of that ultimate higher self, and then there's the soul centric or the soul level of development, which is kind of the place where the infinite and the finite meet in its most real and practical forms. And when you say that a person has lost his soul, it seems like they've lost any contact with the higher self. Okay. And when I've had quite a few very powerful realizations in my life. I've kind of, as I've often said, I was haunted by God, started when I was around 11 or 12 years old. But when I first started using binaural beats back in the day, I don't know how long ago, it was 15, 16 years ago, something like that. And I had one of these massive, openings, if you will. But one of the things that was pointed out to me, or somehow I realized in that experience, was that the small self, the John, little John here, is real, and it just doesn't do any good pretending it doesn't exist and saying it's all a fantasy. In certain states of consciousness, that does seem to drop away. And then they say body, mind drop, where the awareness of your ego and your body and yourself goes away. But, it comes back in spades. And in that state of openness, it was kind of, I saw that the self is as real as anything is. It's a self, the small self is as real as a tree, a rock, a stream, the clouds, birds, dogs, other people. And I think they're absolutely real. And but it is all a manifestation of the one. And in the higher levels, who was the sage that talked about it? But he said, it was called Nagarjuna, right? They called him the second Buddha. And one of the realizations, one of the teachings that he brought forth, as opposed to early Buddhism, where it was just simply emptiness, body, mind drop, all that's gone. But he said that emptiness is form. In other words, so the ultimate state of consciousness, God, whatever, is nothing but this bottle of water and, the smartphone and the tree and the dog that's sitting under my desk and me. Okay. And so when you get that emptiness, form is emptiness, it's that kind of realization that it's all God, if you will, and thou art that, which is kind of the ultimate thing. But getting back to, obviously, the meditation can help cultivate this, and studying the wisdom literature and listening to the mystics and listening to their talks can also cultivate this realization and then stabilize it. That's what practice does, because when we have these experiences, it's not enough just to have them. As those of us who have used mind-altering substances, well, whether it be alcohol or psychedelic mushrooms or anything, it's a state of consciousness, and then the state goes away, and you're back into whatever your normal state is, unless there's been some kind of really radical change. And sometimes when we use these substances unwisely, they're really negative. That's one of my guitar heroes, Peter Green. You know, he did massive amount of LSD back in the late 60s, and he never completely came back from it. So it can be harmful. So anyway, what I'm saying is we have to use these substances with respect, but I do respect them. And but what we can also do in our meditation is get to that place, that kind of soul place where we get into our deepest little individual self, and there we can get insights into our life, into our relationships, into our purpose, into our goals. And these are absolutely essential apprehensions or things to cultivate for truly fulfilled and meaningful, if not happy life. You have to know what you're about. You have to know what you're here to do, and to do that, you have to ask the questions, and you have to listen to the intuitions. And I think in the interior practice, we become more aware of that. We begin to experience that. And so when we're having crises in our lives, we learn to go in and settle the mind and just get to that place where you're aware of awareness without thoughts. And then things can arise, and you can hold a question. And whatever it is, you know, it's like, God, what is my life about? Or, you know, I'm in this awful relationship, or whatever it is. And from that place, wisdom can begin to emerge and can help you to cope with it, you know, and all the issues of life, birth, life and death, and relationships, and callings and meanings, and you know, what would a just political system look like? You know, it's a great question. You know, we are very complex critters, you know, and very complex technologies and backgrounds and all this. So how do we work all this stuff out? And these are questions that I think we can begin to realize. And a man that I respected a lot one time told, he said, my religion is wisdom. So in our interiors, in the silences, in the openness, the emptying of ourselves. I think in Christian mysticism, they call it the kenosis, the emptying. We begin to find our purpose, and we begin to find peace, and we begin to find the ultimate answers to the questions that have always, the ultimate and the non-ultimate answers. We can find a lot of answers, and we can be directed to, it's often said, when the student's ready, the teacher will show up, or the book will show up, or the poem will show up, or the play will show up, or the movie will show up, or that place in nature, or that animal will show up to guide, to instruct. And when we begin to understand that, we begin to see it's not a meaningless universe. You know, it is not. It is deep wired it seems to be very directional. And randomness is somehow all a part of the non-randomness, if you will. And it's very different, but it is essentially our home, that kind of realization. And that's when we come home to ourselves, we come home to the universe, we come home to our lives, we come home to reality. And so anyway, let us cultivate that. And there is no genuine revolution for the best of all creatures, humanity, and all our brothers and sisters in all shapes, sizes, and colors, blah, blah, without an interior revolution also. So that hasn't been the thrust of our civilization in the past. And I think with the advent of modern psychology, Freud and Jung and humanistic psychology, we began to pay more attention to that. But now it is absolutely essential part that not only do we have to have a strong body, not only do we have to build a just structure that takes care and keeps the environment healthy and clean and happy, but also we have to pay attention to our interior development and do that work to become who we need to be.
And we're going through very protean times. I was listening to a lecture by Richard Tarnas, one of my favorite authors. He wrote a book called The Passions of the Western Mind. And it's always one of my, if I was on the desert island, one of my top 5 books. And he just goes through the history of Western thought and how it developed. But he's also an astrologer of profound insight, and not just your stuff you read in the newspaper or something, but he's really worked on it. And he says there's all kinds of things going planetarily right now, that we're very protean, powerful times. Things are just, these issues of injustice and power and this and that are really cranking it out. And he says that these are not preordained what's going to happen. It is potentials and things that are working out that really requires us to show up and do our bit, do our part. And as long as we're doing that, we can be okay with ourselves. And that's what we're here to do. So anyway, thank you for listening, and thank you for meditating with us again. Really appreciate you showing up. And this has always been it's one of my favorite parts of the week. And let's continue to do this and let people know about it, so we can, the more of us get together and do the practice together, the better off we're going to be for our ancestors, for all of those who are on the planet now, and those to come, and the rest of the universe also. So that's a big menu. Anyway, love you guys. Thanks a lot.